Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now we've got a very big banner coming up the following week after this video is released, but before that we do still have one more banner left to go, which will be accompanying more of the story and Arc 3 Chapter 1, and it's going to be bringing along not Cecil, but his young son Ceodore from Final Fantasy IV The After Years, who is also bringing along some holy attacks, some really interesting mechanics in order to kind of drain his own health, make himself stronger, and hit like an absolute bus in the process. But is he going to be worth your resources this close to the amazingness that is Paladin Cecil? If you'd like to find out more about what to do with Lufenia, what to do with Ceodore, etc., then of course stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we get started, don't forget to check out all of my social media links, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. On Twitch this week, nothing too out there, just going to be doing some streaming for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, as I do with every event as it's released, and I'm also currently experimenting with changing up the timing of my streaming when I stream in the evening, or in the British evening, so that I can better accommodate people in different time zones. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. On Patreon today, I'll shout out one of my patrons, as I do with every video at random, so that I can give my thanks to each and every person individually. And today that person is going to be Master Sephiroth, who, as you can see from their title card here, is a fan of, you guessed it, Sephiroth. So if you were interested in a title card just like they have, and you'd like to take part in voice chats with myself and other bits and pieces like being involved in Would You Pull and all sorts of other nice things like that, then of course maybe consider becoming a patron yourself as well. Don't forget to check out all of the other resources that are out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia, and don't forget to check out all of the other content creators out there besides myself. So now let's take a look at the banner that's going to be coming along with the new story chapter on Wednesday, and it's going to contain Ceodore with all of his kits, so his EX, his LD, his 15, 35, all of that good stuff. It's going to be your last chance to get hold of Onion Knight's Burst if you don't already have it. And it's also going to be bringing along Alphino and Cid from FF7's EX. Now Cid's never been anything fantastic, being realistic, and that doesn't change here. Alphino's a really fun character to play around with even now though, even if you only have his EX, which obviously is all the kit that he's got. So as consolation prizes go, it's a pretty good one to have. But we're here to talk about Ceodore and what it is about him that makes him enticing and what doesn't as well. Now there's a misconception about Ceodore that people think that because of the character that follows Ceodore, that Ceodore is bad, and that simply is not the case. Cecil, his dad, is really quite insane and does fulfill a lot of the same roles, however, as Ceodore, so that does make him a lot less desirable. But we'll go over that in a little while. Let's have a look exactly what Ceodore does. Now, Ceodore revolves around a particular special effect that he gives himself through either his skill 2 or his LD, which is the awakening buff. This not only increases his stats, his overflow, his max HP even, but it consumes 80% of his HP after it expires. So it starts at 4 turns from his skill 2 and 5 turns of his skill after using his LD. And if it runs out, he loses a very, very large chunk of his HP. But what it does also do is it gives him access, once you've equipped all of the passives and everything like that, to a brave attack and an HP attack that are extremely powerful for what they are. So his brave plus awakening is, it's actually listed under his EX plus here. It becomes a 5-hit brave HP attack with AoE bravery damage and single target HP damage, whereas his HP plus becomes a 6-hit bravery single target and a HP damage attack with 50% splash damage. That's a lot for a bravery or an HP attack on its own. It does do a significant amount of damage. But that's not the only thing that he has to offer. The awakening ability itself also cleanses all of his debuffs, which is something that will become relevant to the mission that he comes on, and heals him for all of his health and batteries him as well, and it just gives him the ability to use all of his other stuff. His skill 1, however, his Saint's Blast, actually has nothing to do with his awakening buff, but it is, after you've put all the passives and everything onto it, a 6-hit brave HP attack with the Holy Element, and all of his kit is Holy Elemental as well, so again it does cross over with his dad later on, and this deals 50% splash damage as well, and also enchants him for Holy by giving him the Red Wings buff, which ups his attack, his max bravery, and enchants him for holy, and then inflicts Holy Wedge, which is also a Holy Imperil and an attack debuff as well on top of it. So those are his two main skills. His C65 is a party heal and also increases overflow limit, so it's a nice one to have access to. He does also have auras that raise party HP, attack, things like that. So he actually, like, when you've like factored everything in, he actually raises the party's max bravery by 70% and attack by 85%. So it's not a small amount, like to say the least. His EX, however, is where things get really interesting in terms of damage. Now, Ceodore's EX, you may as well ignore everything on this particular part of the page, except for that normal word on there. He has a normal recast rate attack. So that means that with the speed increase, it's not going to take an awful lot for you to refill this, so you'll get to use it quite frequently, which is just as well, because more often than not, you're going to be wanting to use his bravery or his HP plus. Now, when you've got the awakening buff, this becomes Vibra plus plus. So it becomes a bit of an odd word to say, but what it ends up becoming once you've maxed everything out is basically the difference between having awakening and not having it is an entire attack's worth of stuff. So if you're using it without the buff, you get a 6-hit Brave HP attack to all targets that hits twice, and if you're using it with the Awakening buff, you're getting it 3 times instead. Now it's split damage, but 18 hit Brave HP with 2 HP dumps in the middle is pretty heavy last time I checked. So the fact that you're getting party battery off of this after you've dealt the damage as well, and it's party battery, not ally battery, so he's keeping himself safe while he's at it. He's able to kind of manipulate his turn a little bit, because Awakening is also an instant turn as well, as long as you have his 35 CP weapon. So you've got loads of kind of outlets with auras and some healing and stuff like that, little bits and pieces where he's able to just churn out large amounts of damage. And his LD augments this even further. So his LD, Divine Heal, removes all debuffs from the party entirely, massively heals everybody, like up to 90% of their HP, I believe, so it's going to heal everybody a lot, and then it's also going to battery the party based on his HP after he's healed everybody. Then does, after LD boards, he does a 4-hit AoE Brave HP and then a 6-hit AoE Brave HP, as opposed to the 8-hit one you can see on my right here. So it does double HP dump again, and then it also gives another buff, which is his next generation buff, or leader, however it ends up being translated, and gives the party some of the attack and the max bravery up that I spoke about earlier, making it so that you get a pretty large amount of stats across the board. So he's an aura-based, holy HP attacker. Like, he does a lot of damage, and he does heal very frequently, and he does have little niches like having the Ezunaga, things like that. The problem with Ceodore is when he is being released. The same could have been said for Arciella, because Arciella, actually a really good character. Her problem is her timing of her release. And the same can be said for Ceodore here. Ceodore is holy elemental. Like, everything he does is holy. And so, holy, like, going forward, gets resisted a little bit more often than others, and we all kind of know why. And then, obviously, next week is going to be Cecil's release, which is also a holy attacker that also has massive, like, party benefits in a similar vein to Ceodore, but kind of better in a lot of ways. But he doesn't have, like, the Ezunaga like Ceodore does, but you could replace Ceodore quite easily with the likes of Balthea or Pinello and characters like that, where you, like, Ezunaga is rare, but it's not completely unheard of. Like at this point, because we got that extra character in Balthea, I said when Balthea was released that if you had him, you could quite happily skip both Arciella and Ceodore. And I stand by that statement, because the Ezunaga and the Dispel is the big thing that kind of makes those two characters less desirable. But to say that Ceodore is bad is just completely wrong, because he does a lot of damage, he does have a lot of benefits to him, but because of the stuff that's being released either side of him, he does fall to the wayside a little bit. Cecil has a lot of the same stuff that Ceodore has coming next week, where he's got the heals, he's got the defenses, he's got the battery, he's got the holy enchant for the party, where Ceodore only enchants himself, and he's got the imperil on his EX and his LD. He's going to be churning out massive amounts of damage. He's a burst character where Ceodore isn't. You could pair them up together, I guess, and you don't have to like really make any arguments either way, because you get both of them, and they're, Ceodore is able to churn out a lot of damage with his like AoE splash damage, with all the stuff that comes with his EX. It does work out very well. But before you go pulling on Ceodore, my honest suggestion would be to wait until Cecil comes out. Pull for him first, and then if you have resources left over, you could consider coming back to Ceodore if you've decided that Cecil isn't enough for your holy busted needs. Although, honestly, I think when you get Cecil, you'll kind of see why you don't really need Ceodore. The sad thing is with Ceodore is every little extra thing I read about him kind of makes me want him, and I have to stay strong and just wait that extra week for Cecil, because Ceodore is actually really good. He's just kind of kicked to the curb by his dad, which is really savage, because his LD call is actually pretty good. Like, you get the 10 hit brave HP with the double HP dump, as you can see just here. You get the the Ezunaga off of it, the same as you would do if you had Penelo, if you were using her LD call. You get the massive party battery and HP heal, and it hits hard as well for an ability. For a call ability at the very least, it kind of does a little bit of everything that you'd really want. And then his Saint's Blast also does the Imperil, and it also wholly enchants the character that's calling, which is kind of similar to what we've seen with Gao and his Earth Enchant and Imperil with like his LD call that we got recently. There's a lot of nice stuff there that it just kind of adds up to being just nice to have. But I think that that's kind of the key sentence when it comes to Ceodore, in that he's nice to have, but he's certainly not mandatory in any way. And then his high armor is the Unity Keystone, which is like my favorite. I love the Unity Keystone on a high armor because I think it just works with everything. Like, I'm never upset to see this armor, but again, not needed. It's just really nice to have. And then finally, with his artifacts, he has a C50 that boosts his max bravery and his attack as long as Red Wings is active, which realistically it should be pretty much at all times. And then he just wants lots of attack, and he hits pretty damn hard. So now let's take a look at the Lufenia mission that's going to come along with Arc 3, Chapter 1, Part 2. It gets very difficult to say after a while. And this time around we're going to be talking about the Tunnelers. So these are like centipede-like monsters. I think they're fairly unique. I've not seen them in any other game before, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And the first thing that you'll notice about these guys, A, is that the Brave gains are still down. Like, that aura is now just a thing that we have to deal with, and it is going to be permanent, so just get to grips with that as best you can. And these guys like to inflict a framed debuff on you that doesn't disappear like over turn, so you have to try and Azuna it, but you're going to want to do that anyway, because A, it's an HP poison that gets stronger and like the longer it lasts, and you definitely want to get rid of it because it does get to the point where it deals like 4,000 HP damage per tick at level 2, so you definitely don't want to get any higher than that. And so therefore you're going to want to bring Azuna. And that's kind of the name of the game here, because the orb also asks you to bring Azuna along with you. So it starts the fight with it up until they hit past 80% HP, and it lasts at 20 turns to start with, so you've got a nice amount of time before you have to start clearing it off again. And then it comes back again after half health, and then it stays until the rest of the fight. Now, every time you cleanse a debuff, so Azuna, anything like that, you get plus 20 to your turn count for the orb. Now, these guys also have a stance that increases their resistance to every weapon type, so melee, ranged, and magic. But, as we all know from previous experience, you can circumvent this by dealing elemental damage, and therefore bringing a character like Ceodore along, who is a character who has Azuna, like multiple facets, like he can do it to himself, he can do it to the party, and he can enchant himself and imperil holy damage so that he can at least deal a lot of damage, and AoE at that makes him perfect for this mission, but so it should, it's his banner. But if you have any combination of either Onion Knight or Kuja, and then either Penelo or Balthea, and then you just kind of fill in the gaps for the third party member, that's going to be the easiest way for you to get around this. Balthea is fantastic for this fight because he's got good AoE damage. He can Izuna himself. He can cleanse debuffs off himself by using his EX. He can also, and his skill 2, I believe, as well. He can also, Izuna the party with his LD, and he's going to be providing the Brave and damage up, HP damage up, which is actually going to be pretty massive because these guys have 6 million HP each, and their defenses are huge. Like, they get to a point where it's quite... Like, there's a lot of characters that just won't deal a lot of damage to them, so if any Brave and HP damage up you can get, you should take. Similarly, Penelo is also fantastic for this because her LD has the Ezunaga on it. She's got the regen on there, so because you're going to be taking HP damage during this fight. The enemies also like to increase their bravery a lot, and because her EX can basically almost always bring it down to 0 before dealing a decent amount of damage, and then allowing you to use like regen waltz or whatever to bring the party's bravery back up, it's going to be absolutely invaluable. So if you have either of those two characters, and then either Onion Knight and Kuja doing the enchant in peril and the damage thing, you're going to be off to a really good start. Now, they're immune to HP damage, HP disable, which makes RCLA slightly less useful. However, she is still useful because she's able to kind of make it so that they can't gain bravery through her LD. So if you have got RCLA, she is synergy. You could bring her along for this as well. They also have a recast attack that cannot have its HP damage reduced because what the game wants you to do is heal with Ceodore, etc. So you can't reduce the HP damage, so you just need to try to get past that. So you could even bring somebody like you could just make sure you bring somebody that can heal a lot of HP, basically. And then it also dispels some of your buffs, so make sure you're able to reapply them quickly. And as I say, this is the attack that inflicts the HP poison, so you want to make sure you're able to deal with that. Ramza's also a really good character here because his shout is going to take care of whenever they gain their massive amounts of bravery. You've got the launch, he's got the delay that it makes so that you can at least kind of prepare yourself for the turns. You've got brave regen with him. He's going to be really helpful as well, particularly as an LD call or as a friend unit if you wanted to bring him along for that. Onion Knight similarly, because of the turn manipulation, things like that, also a fantastic choice. But when it comes to any kind of Lufenia like this one, the best advice I can give you is make sure that the debuffs are there for you to cleanse when the second lot of the Lufenia orb comes up. Because if they're not there, and you've been delaying them for too much during that period of time where they don't have the orb, then they're going to run out, and you end up losing and having to start all over again. You have to actually allow them to give you the toxin debuff so that you can then get rid of it. So now we come to the big question, should you be pulling for Ceodore? Now, honestly, my best advice here is to hold out if you can. I think Ceodore is actually really interesting. He's got some very, I say unique, they're unique right now capabilities, up until next week where his father Cecil will come out and perform many of the same roles that Ceodore does, and more often than not in far superior ways. Like, Ceodore has the auras, Cecil also has those auras, but Cecil will also give like 50% bravery damage and 20% HP damage up to the party. So if you're looking for somebody to pair up with Balthea and get like insane auras and the defenses and the party, and the battery and the healing and stuff like that, Cecil is going to have you covered, and he's also a holy enchant and impaler too. So basically everything Ceodore does is kind of circumvented by his dad next week. However, he does have a really strong damage output. Like, that Vibra Plus hits really hard. 18 hits is a lot for an EX with a quick recast rate, and his HP Plus and Brave Plus attacks are really good too. And he does have the Ezunaga that his LD carries, and the ability to cleanse debuffs off of himself whenever he wants while using his skill 2. He's a character that also benefits really nicely from Onion Knight because the Awakening buff, or the special effect, is very, very important to his kit. So if you have Onion Knight, then it might make Ceodore a little bit more appealing to you. He does also have massive healing capabilities, like his LD heals a lot, and therefore you can kind of get away with that if you wanted to. But if you're happy to wait until Agrius comes out, which is a few months away, but this is when you'll see Ceodore returning. So if Agrius is a character that you know you like and appeals to you, saving a character for a later banner is sometimes prudent because it makes that banner way more appealing because it makes a consolation prize for you that you maybe didn't think about before. He does also only enchant himself with Holy. So while he imperils it, and he does enchant himself with it, he doesn't give Holy to his party members. So that might be a reason to put you off of him. So my best suggestion is, because practically everybody is saving for Paladin Cecil next week for many of the same reasons as what I've just described to you with Ceodore, maybe it's prudent to kind of go in with Cecil and kind of see how you feel with him, because people are using gems on him. I think it's very unlikely that people are going to pull for Ceodore and not Cecil. But if you get Cecil and you kind of go, I kind of would like more of this, then maybe you could go back for Ceodore. But chances are, once you have Cecil, you're probably not really going to look back very much, because he really is just that good. And then lastly, of course, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to make your voice heard and say whether you would or wouldn't pull on any particular banner and why. So a big thank you once again to all of my patrons for casting their votes and their comments. And again, as I said earlier, if you'd like to consider becoming a patron yourself, you yourself could get involved with this too. Now, this is kind of predictable, and it makes me sad because I get it, even though I actually really like Ceodore. But 42% of people said that no, they weren't going to pull on this banner at all. 42% of people said that they were going to use less than 100 tickets. Only 13% said that they were going to use more than 100 tickets. And only 3% of people said that they were going to use gems on this banner. So for a lot of people, this is pretty much a pass. And I think that a lot of it comes down to the fact that people are just waiting for Cecil. However, just because you have Cecil, it doesn't make Ceodore completely useless. I'll say the same thing here as I said when it came to Balthea. People said that not to pull for Balthea because Cecil was coming. But it's like, you can put them both in the same party, and it actually turns out to be some really nasty results. Let's not forget that you've got Ceodore's framed Holy Imperil, which will combine nicely with Paladin Cecil's unframed Holy Imperil. And the enchants are different as well, because it's percentile based, so it works well that way. Most of the comments have kind of looked like this one for me, but there are some other ones, like a big shout out to Doma Dragoon there for his comment there and kind of speaking for the masses, as it were. But Spickle here says, she'll be using around 100 tickets. I love FF4 and I feel that his playstyle from After Years is implemented really well. I never played After Years or FF4. And he's an example of a high risk, high reward character. Vivi could be considered the same. His damage output is massive as long as you're willing to risk your HP being low. The fact he comes back later with Agrius, someone I shall also be pulling for, and the fact that Cecil is coming up, however, prevent me from going full throttle here for him. And I think that a lot of people are very interested in Agrius as well, and she's a very popular character, and so having, like I said, that consolation prize of Ceodore, or a reason to pull on one banner more harshly than kind of splitting yourself across two, can sometimes prove to be very prudent for you. Alpha Prime here says probably going to use about 50 tickets to try for his LD, as I have enough power tokens and EX tokens to get the rest of his kit. This is probably what I'm going to end up doing. He seems like a fun character to play with, but as a lot of people have alluded to, his dad outshines him, and I've tried hard to save resources for him as you can. I think this comes down to, if you have resources and you know you can pity Cecil, you can use some if you want to. But if you're struggling with resources and you're saving for Cecil, don't break it here if you can help it. Tidal Raid here says, while I'd love to have Ceodore, he'll only be getting the free pull and a handful of tickets. I'm just under a pity amount in gems, and banners have been stressing my tickets out. Gotta save them for Cecil. So again, first things first, let's not forget we do actually get a free pull here, because it was alluded to in the community stream at the beginning of the month with that the story banners would get one, and this is a story banner, so we're getting a free pull here. So this is probably what I'm doing, but I think that honestly, and it's the same for Arciella, depending on how Cecil treats me, I may come back to both of these banners. You know, self-control and everything be damned. And then finally, Terry, she says, Ceodore gets just a couple of tickets from me. If I strike lucky and get his LD, I can round out his kit using EX and power tokens. He doesn't bring anything at table exciting enough to warrant a gem pull for my roster. I agree. I'm not going to use gems on this banner. I mean, hopefully. I'm not going to use gems on this banner, but I do think that he deserves a little more credit than he gets by the community at large, because I do think that his damage output is good. Having Ezunaga and Ezuna on him whenever you need it is useful. He benefits massively from Onion Knight by having extra uses of Awakening. I think that he's just a really cool character to have, and I think that the fact that people are kind of tunnel visioned on Cecil, I get why. He is really powerful, but people are very tunnel visioned on Cecil, and I fear that maybe people might miss out on a potential combo piece with him that would actually work quite well. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notifications. And comment below and let me know what you think of Ceodore. Whether you think he's undervalued, whether you think he's easy skip, whether you think he's actually quite cool. I actually think, like, even though I've never played FFL4 after years or anything, I quite like his design. His animations are really cool. Like he splits in two with loads of his attacks, and they all look really flashy. So that's maybe a little bit of me talking positively about it when I didn't need to, but I kind of like him. I'm not going to spend loads of resources on him, especially when everyone's saving up for the following week, but I think he is cool. So let me know what you guys think as well. Thank you all very much again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So I'll see you then. Take care. Bye bye.